Tonight on the record, well, at least General Joseph Dunford will admit it. ISIS is not contained. Now, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff making this admission today while testifying on Capitol Hill. And the general statement, though, is in direct conflict with what President Obama insisted just one day before the Paris terror attacks. President Obama said ISIS is contained. So which is it?
From the start, our goal has been first to contain, and we have contained them.
Have we currently contained ISIL?
We have not contained ISIL.
ISIS is gaining strength, aren't they?
I don't think they're gaining strength.
We have a president that thinks that ISIS has been contained.
He keeps asserting, well, they're contained. No, they're not.
ISIS is not a JV team, Mr. President. They are not contained.
He hadn't contained anything.
They are at our shores, and they measure their victory in body count.
Strategically, they have spread since 2010.
We have contained them.
And today, Secretary of Defense Ash Carter saying 200 U.S. Special Operations Forces are being sent to Iraq to target ISIS. Right now, Arizona Congresswoman and the first female fighter pilot to fly in combat, Congresswoman Martha McSally, goes on the record. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Greta.
It's rather, I mean, if it weren't so serious, it would be rather disturbing that the president says ISIS is contained, as Joint Chief of Staff says it's not contained. It's like, who's on first? What is the problem here? I mean, doesn't everybody know?
Yeah, well, they're not contained, and General Dunford is asked to give his best military advice when he's testifying before Congress, so I'm glad that he actually admitted that. Look, that hearing went on for several hours, and even though there's some increased deployments, there's still more of the same gradualism and incrementalism. This threat has been growing and metastasizing since they declared the caliphate 17 months ago.
Well, but I mean, that's what's so disturbing. I mean, the president is commander-in-chief, and we have some maps that we could put up on here to show. I mean, if you would just look at our maps to see where we've isolated ISIS, you could tell that. Look at, here's November 2015. That's the ISIS. Look at that map right there. That's where ISIS is. Now let's go back. Look at that. That's February 2015. I mean, how in the world is our commander-in-chief thinking that it's contained?
And not only that, but they've got influence in up to 19 different countries. They have a very sophisticated social media campaign. We have what we know about is 30,000 foreign fighters from 100 different countries that are flowing into Iraq and Syria. We have 900 investigations in all 50 states in America. Libya is now becoming another safe haven and exporting their terror, what we saw on the Sinai. This is more metastasizing, which also they admitted today, that this is growing and metastasizing, and this administration has not seriously had a strategy to defeat and destroy them.
All right, look at side by side. President Obama would just take 30 seconds to turn on Fox News. He'd know this is not contained when he looks at from February until just now. All right, well, today the big news is that we're going to put special ops on the ground. But here's the thing that I thought was interesting is, and this is where the general's probably in conflict again with the president, because General Dunford said that we're going to go where the enemy is, meaning they're going to ignore borders. So while everyone could talk about dropping these troops, these special ops in Iraq, they're going into Syria.
Well, they used some carefully worded phrasing to say that they would be positioned to be able to conduct unilateral operations in Syria. Again, this is just a small increase.
He said we're going to ignore borders. We're going to where the enemy is.
And I've been calling for special operation troops, for unleashing air power, for doing more to defeat and destroy their command and control, their logistics capability. This appears to be a shift, but I'm concerned that it's more incrementalism. They also admitted today that they considered the truck drivers of the oil trucks that we finally started bombing to be non-combatants. I just can't believe that. We dropped leaflets telling them to get away from their trucks before we actually hit them.
You know, you say that it's a shift, but I actually think that the military has been pulling his hair out, trying to get the president to open up his eyes, because even former head of Defense Intel, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, over on CNN with Jake Tapper, he told Jake Tapper that leading up to 2012 election, the president's advisors ignored intelligence predicting the rise of ISIS because it didn't meet their elective narrative, and he called them JV. Of course, we know in January of 2014. I mean, what is going on with this president?
It seems like this president campaigned on wanting to get out of the Middle East. He's been the reluctant commander-in-chief, wanting to shift to Asia, ignore this threat. Been very myopically also focused on the nuclear deal with Iran, which is related to this because our Sunni Arab partners in the region are more concerned about Iran, which is a militant Islam, great state sponsor of terror, and they're refusing to take action against ISIS. So,
but he's almost got a viewpoint of one. If he's got the military people, and if he's got the general now saying publicly something directly contradicting, which is actually a big deal. I I mean, he is a viewpoint of one.
I agree. He's detached. He's listening to the wrong people. His tone has been off. His understanding of the facts have been off. The American people are now deeply concerned about this threat and their impact on the homeland. And President Obama continues to think the largest enemy he has is the GOP. So I'm glad to see that his military advisors are finally speaking some of the truth. But I am still concerned from the testimony today. It's more of the same sort of reluctance. The more of the same, maybe we're going to do a little bit more. And we learned in Vietnam that gradualism does not work. We need to look at them as a state. We need to identify their centers of gravity, their critical capabilities, and we need to unleash American air power in a way that they have been reluctant to do in order to destroy them where they are.
Congresswoman, thank you. And as always, thank you for your service, as I always say to you. Nice to see you.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
And I want to know what you viewers think at home. President Obama says ISIS is contained. Is he right or is he wrong? Tweet right or tweet wrong using hashtag Greta. We'll show you your live Twitter votes throughout the show. And developing now, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton taking a page out of President Obama's playbook. Secretary Clinton announcing she is opposed to sending U.S. combat troops to fight ISIS.
I agree with the president's point that we're not putting American combat troops back into Syria or Iraq. We are not going to do that. In terms of thousands of combat troops, like some on the Republican side are recommending, I think that should be a non-starter. And it should be a non-starter both because I don't think it's the smartest way to go after ISIS. I think it gives ISIS a new recruitment tool if we get back in the fight.
The On the Record political panels here from the Boston Globe, Matt Pfizer, and from the Washington Post, Aaron Blake. Matt, first to you. Secretary Clinton says that she doesn't want combat troops on the ground. That's her position. She's obviously not the president. Are we fooling ourselves? Have we got these 200 special ops on the ground? Are they going there? I mean, aren't they going there to fight?
I mean, there are special operations troops there already and heading there. I do think the difference that Hillary Clinton would try to draw is ground troops is a different order of magnitude. There would be larger groups of them. They would be fighting directly rather than providing more of a supportive role. So that's the difference that she's trying to draw in where she's kind of aligning herself with the president. She hasn't done that in the past. She's been more hawkish. She's supported a no-fly zone and things like that.
And in all fairness to her, she's been out of office for 4 years, so she doesn't have the intel, as no candidate for president has the intel that the president has. Of course, the president, though, is, as I said, has a viewpoint of one, apparently, if his generals say something different.
And look, Hillary Clinton is playing the same semantics game that the White House has been playing with this announcement. There were a number of instances where Obama or top officials, foreign policy officials in the White House, said that there would not be ground troops in Iraq and Syria. Later on, it became no combat ground troops, and that's the line that they're going with in this particular case. So, you know, it's nice. It's a nice thing to say there will be no combat ground troops, but if there's anything that's this last few years has shown us, it's that it's hard to make any kind of guarantees in these circumstances. And certainly, Hillary Clinton left herself some wiggle room in case that were ever to come to pass.
I think it's fair to sort of hit the president over the head with the fact that he's sort of slow to see what his generals are seeing. I think that's fair. But I think on the other hand is that we sort of have to make it safe for our politicians to change their views based on changed circumstances, you know, so that they, you know, they don't sort of get into a situation where they just want to be right.
The other interesting thing, I think, to point out with Hillary Clinton is that she was arguing as Secretary of State more forcefully for arming Syrian rebels.
In Libya, and in Libya as well.
So she comes at this from a different perspective than the president, and she advised him differently than the advice. He did not take her advice.
How important is this? Do you think this could be the issue in 2016?
You know, I would say right now it looks more and more. It's a year out, obviously, but certainly this issue has shown no signs of abating. It's only become more of an issue now, of course, with the Paris attacks. You know, if indeed ISIS is planning to strike elsewhere worldwide, it's only going to become a bigger issue. Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen, but certainly this is an issue that I think a few months ago we didn't think was going to be a real big deal in the 2016 campaign. The candidates just cannot ignore it right now.
And of course, if something happens huge in our economy, that then becomes the issue because we're rather fickle that way. Anyway, Matt, Aaron, stick around.